Hello, hello. This is Taylor Ursula of That's So Pisces. And y'all, it is Taurus season. Let's talk about it. So, Taurus season starts off on a really weird note. Okay, let's just put that out there. The moment it becomes Taurus season, we are already in the throes of a new moon eclipse that has squared Pluto. So, we're going to start off a little on edge. The first day of Taurus season, the sun squares Pluto. Okay, we are not who we think we are when we enter Taurus season. And this may carry the energy that emanates from this 29th degree Aries new moon eclipse that we will have just moved through when we arrive in Taurus season. We are used to Taurus season being a time of slowing down, a time of catching our breath after Aries season, a time of making tangible plans out of the ideas that have been born from Aries season. And yet this Taurus season is gonna hit a little different. Not only have we started off with the luminaries squaring Pluto, but Mercury is also stationing retrograde on the second day of Taurus season in Taurus at 15 degrees. It will station direct towards the end of the season at 5 degrees. And so we will start this Taurus season with more questions than we have answers. We might be moving even more slowly into tangibility as we are confronted by these squares to Pluto, as they show us perhaps the collective response toward something that we are outgrowing or otherwise welcoming into our lives. There's some sense of inner versus outer that is called for us to observe and to allow to transform in some way. This might be a time of needing to root into ourselves, needing to ask ourselves questions about what it is that we're feeling and what it is that we can give to those feelings at this time. This is the first season in quite some time where we will have the new moon at the very end, right? We ended Aries season with a new moon. This is shifting all of our other subsequent new moons towards the end of the month. So our new moon won't be until 28 degrees of Taurus. This means that we'll have the other moon phases unfolding before the new moon. The Leo first quarter moon, the Scorpio full moon, and then the Aquarius third quarter moon, all before we reach that new moon in Taurus. It'll give us a different vibe. We'll be experiencing the season before we get to the point where we're planting seeds around what we've experienced. Taurus season brings us clarity, not only through the Mercury retrograde, as we begin to parse through some of our questions and begin to reprogram some of what our needs may be around, some of our sensuality, some of our senses and our values, as well as our financial situations. We also have the sun meeting the North Node in this season, which means that while shaky, while not necessarily gelled completely, we might start to see some of the progress that we've been making through this nodal journey since the nodes have been in Taurus and Scorpio since mid-January of 2022. We might start to see some signs revealing themselves to us at this time of what this journey has ultimately been about. We are nearing the end of the Taurus North Node time. The nodes will be shifting into Aries and Libra this summer, mid-July. So we're starting to really get a sense of what these 18 months have meant to us, of what's been coming in the Taurus side of our chart for the past 18 months. One thing to look out for this season is Mars in Cancer squaring Chiron in Aries. Not only is Mars squaring Chiron, Mars is also ruling Chiron from its place of fall. What that means is Mars would rather be where Chiron is in Aries and is wishing that from one of its least favorite signs. Mars feels disrespected here in Cancer. Mars can feel unheard. Mars can be really frustrated in this sign. And so this confrontation may have us lashing out about some of our deepest insecurities, about some of our deepest frustrations surrounding what we haven't been able to bring to fruition in this time. And we may find ourselves really flared up, really spicy, really confrontational ourselves. These are 2 weeks in a row with some confrontational energy going on, being moved about. And so take it easy, take note of what comes up. If there are important confrontations to be had in the form of conversation, then sit with those, get a sense of what needs to be expressed. This also lines up with our first quarter moon in Leo, which might have us feeling some main character syndrome. We might be feeling like we're not getting the attention that we deserve. We might feel that we've been slighted, or that we are having trouble standing out in the way that we feel we need to while participating in some sort of collective care. These are natural feelings. We are humans living in part of a larger system, and a lot of that system is really up in arms right now, really flailing and failing us. And so validate those feelings. Recognize where you want more and be okay with that, even if it's not what's showing up in front of you in real time. Remember that we are experiencing the moon phases in a slightly different order, and it might be that once we get to the new moon at the end of the season, you're clearer on how it is you want to address these themes moving forward. Once May starts, we have Pluto stationing retrograde. Pluto made it just into the first minutes of Aquarius at that 0 degree. And before we get further into this narrative that's opening up, we've got something to wrap up in the final degrees of Capricorn. This is the same day as the Mercury cazimi. This is when Mercury in retrograde will be meeting up with the sun. This is also the halfway point of Mercury retrograde. This reveals something important to us about this retrograde cycle. It shows us who we are and what we are becoming as this retrograde cycle is unfolding. And it brings us a lot of meaty information about what we want to do for the rest of this retrograde and how we want to make sense of retrograde material once it stations direct. Venus, who's been hanging out in Gemini, makes a square to Neptune, the same place where Mars squared Neptune just a few weeks ago. We talked about that being really confounding, really upsetting, revealing to us where we are part of a problematic narrative. Venus here may have us feeling dreamy, maybe imagining what goes into some of those spaces that Mars had cut out for us during that retrograde. Mars really trimmed away at a lot, and Venus has been moving through here, showing us what's able to grow after all of this refinement and redefinition. On Friday, May 5th, we have our final Scorpio full moon eclipse, y'all. Woo! So we are going to be getting clear on what we've been releasing this whole time. I mentioned that with the North Node in Taurus, we're looking at what's been coming in for the past 18 months. With this final full moon eclipse in Scorpio this month, we are really getting clear on what we've shed at this time, what we've stepped out of, how we listen to our instincts at this time, what our connection is to our guts, our kind of sacral energy, and what it is that we are ready to invest in moving forward, especially on an emotional level. Scorpio holds so much of our deepest instincts, our deepest emotional imprints, and it's been a really cathartic time watching the South Node vacuum things out from this space. So I invite you to take inventory of what sort of psychological growth you've experienced, where you've released patterning that hasn't been helpful or healthy for you, getting clear on any attachments that were no longer speaking to you or no longer yours to have, and getting clear on what that has freed up for you, where you have tuned more deeply into those raw instinctual spaces within you, and what power this allows you to experience. Shortly after that, Venus moves into Cancer. This is a time where we may be feeling nostalgic. We may be feeling like we want to spend time just with our closest, nearest, and dearest, those who know us the best, those who we share intimate and vulnerable feelings with, those who feel like home to us. So we might be spending more time reminiscing on things that feel good, tending to any inner child wounds that are lingering, and we may be wanting to connect with those who we like to hold close. Taurus season brings our Uranus cazimi as well. This is where we might see some sort of radical upgrade coming through in our day-to-day lives. The sun is who we are. Uranus is new insights, new downloads from the future. And so these may show up as disruptions to our day. These may show up as accidents or mistakes that turn into some sort of revelation. Our third quarter moon in Aquarius brings us a cycle of letting something go. This is the same day that Venus meets up with Saturn. We might be taking on more responsibility for those we care about in a way that allows us to feel fulfilled or bring some sort of dream to fruition. We might be able to turn an idea into something tangible that manifests over the long term. At the same time as the third quarter moon, we might be asked to let go of some ideologies, release some old rules that we've been operating by in order to bring this dream to life. Just after that, we have Venus and the moon in a really sweet mutual reception. The moon in Pisces trining Venus in Cancer, trading off their energies, connecting each other with those spaces that make them feel really good and really cozy and really at home. And so that weekend of the 13th, 14th might be a really nice time to touch base with those you love, gently enter into dreamland, give yourself creature comforts, things of that nature. That same weekend on the 14th, Mercury finally stations direct. This means that we are moving at our slowest, but we've got all of the information we need around what we're going to course correct at this time. Towards the end of the season, we have Mars in Cancer trining Neptune. Now, I just mentioned the Mars square to Neptune that we had a few weeks ago. This is a time where we might be making peace with some of those really disillusioned energies we had to confront and make some sort of sense out of. This may be a time where we're able to relax into some sort of flow that has emerged in the space that we've made after getting clear on what that square brought to our attention. And so this is a time when we might feel like our dreams and our actions can align in some way. What we're envisioning is tangibly possible in front of us. Efforts we make here can bring things to life. On the 16th, we have Jupiter enter Taurus. Now, for the last few years, we've had Jupiter enter a sign and then retrograde back out of the sign into the previous sign to wrap things up. This time is different. This time, Jupiter will be staying firmly in Taurus. Jupiter typically stations retrograde in the summer, around August. This year, it won't station retrograde until September, giving it a little extra time to get further into Taurus before it stations retrograde. Jupiter will be retrograde until the very end of the year. So we're going to see some of these themes of sensual abundance emerging. We might be called to make use of the resources around us to create some sort of beauty. This is a time where we can find ourselves being really resourceful, finding beauty in small things, as well as opening up to new sensations, really tapping into what our body is feeling, especially since the North Node has been moving through here for the past 18 months. We may begin to see what we've learned in this Taurus North Node time begin to manifest in some way through the activation of Jupiter's presence. Some sort of truth emerging around where our values have evolved, and some sense of abundance in our world that already exists. This is a really beautiful time to make the most of what we have, which in this economy makes a lot of sense and is a welcome invitation. Just like the other planets entering Taurus, Jupiter too will square Pluto upon entry. This is a transit that's bigger than any single person. This is a social planet square an outer planet. This may really show us the beginning of some of this energy that Pluto and Aquarius is bringing to us collectively. We're seeing a lot of policy changes that are leading to many important conversations about community, about civil rights, about human rights, about activism, about resources. And so Jupiter may begin to reveal to us on the social level what the implications of Pluto being in Aquarius will start to look like over the next 20 years that Pluto will spend in Aquarius. This is a transit to take note of. We're going to see things emerge here that we haven't anticipated And this will start to shape the trends of what will be to come. So definitely keep your eye out for what emerges at that time and start to keep track of what sense you're able to make of it, what you're able to connect it to. As I mentioned before, towards the end of the season, we have our Taurus new moon at 28 degrees, and this is on Friday the 19th. And this is when we will be able to look back on what we've experienced during Taurus season. A lot of Pluto activity, a lot of planets stationing retrograde, planets shifting signs. So there's new energy coming in. It's fitting that we get to the end of the season and begin to get clear on what we'd like to bring into this Taurus part of our charts moving forward. The next day, the last day of Taurus season, we have another dramatic shift. Mars leaves Cancer and enters Leo. Now, upon entry, Mars will oppose Pluto. A little different than the squares from Taurus. This is much more of a stare down. This may be where we start to see, personally speaking, what some of the implications of Pluto and Aquarius will look like. Leo is the sign of individuality, of authenticity, of standing in our truth. Aquarius is the sign of the collective, of rules, of regulations and systems, collective definitions. And so this is where we may start to actually get a sense of what we're looking at here when we look at Pluto entering into Aquarius and what those implications will be for us as individuals. This is going to be some pretty lit stuff. So hold on to your hats and your butts, okay? Try to, as personal as this energy is, do your best to remember that information is coming in to show us where we are growing, where we are changing, and where we're being challenged perhaps by the collective. All, again, a natural part of being human, of showing up here on Earth and participating in this crazy world. All right, y'all, it is time for our prediction poll. As I did last time, I'll go through all of the signs, check out the timestamps below for yours, and go ahead and skip to your reading, and I'll see you over there.
Okay, as you can see, we've got the Chariot pulled out, which is the card for the year that we are currently experiencing collectively. We also have the Hierophant, which affiliates with Taurus. So we'll be getting a sense of how these cards connect us to our broader journey of the year through the lens of the season we're currently moving through. Go ahead and check out the timestamps for your sign. Read for your sun, moon, rising, whatever feels good to you today. And I'll see you there. All right, Taurus, you are front and center this season. All of these Taurus activities taking place smack in your first house of self. The sun meeting with the North Node as it finishes this journey in your first house, which means that Pluto is stationing retrograde in your 10th house of career, long-term contribution to the world, legacy. We have Mercury stationing retrograde in your first house of self, revealing more to you about you. This Mars Chiron square takes place from your 3rd to your 12th, which means that this anger, this frustration may be between your own mind and the ether that your mind is connected to, where your ideas come from, what everything means to you. Venus moving into Cancer shows up in your 3rd house to bring a little sweetness to that mind and immediate environment space. We see Jupiter enter your 1st house this season, which means you'll be showing up in bigger, more tangible ways. This new moon takes place in your 1st house, showing that it's time to get a sense of what you want to begin for yourself and your self-development now. And we have Mars moving into your 4th house of home, of privacy, and emotional body. So let's take a look at some themes that you'll be working through this season and get a sense of how they connect you to the larger context of the Chariot year. Okay. Okay. Temperance here in the middle, sandwiched by the Knight of Cups and the Five of Pentacles, which give some very different emotional vibes here. The Knight of Cups is one who is ready to sweep someone or something off their feet, who is ready and committed to demonstrate some sort of emotional capacity. Meanwhile, the Five of Pentacles shows us the more tangible side of maybe lacking energy, lacking the resources necessary to put out these efforts of emotion. Temperance in the middle, showing us some of the balance between these two elements, right? Water, earth here on either side. And we also see air and fire layered over these earth and water elements. So what this tells me is that there is a big need to establish balance at this time. You might be, with all of this presence in your first house, you might feel ready to step up and be something to someone, to demonstrate outwardly, especially thinking about Jupiter entering your first house and bringing an abundance of presence. There might be a lot of opportunities to be this Knight of Cups this season, to demonstrate emotionally where you want to show up for others. This also signals me to think about this final Scorpio eclipse taking place in your 7th house. You're finally moving through these themes of release, and you're able to recognize how emotionally you are ready and capable to step up for others. On the other side, there may be an energetic imbalance with Mercury retrograde in your first house, with Mars hanging out in your 3rd, squaring Chiron to the 12th. There may be a feeling of lack. There may be a feeling of, or a perception of loss in some capacity. The trick with the Five of Pentacles is to remember that there is access to resources available to us, but we need to be willing to look. We need to be willing to go inside, perhaps. We need to be willing to be vulnerable. How these two sort of play out together certainly shows us some clue as to what temperance looks like for you this month. There is a need to remain balanced. When you feel this sort of Five of Pentacles sneaking up on you, perhaps thinking about where this is connected to how you're showing up for others and getting a sense of what you need here. This might be really eager energy. This might be, I really want to do this. I need to do this. Someone's asking me to do this. And it's important to recognize where performing this emotional labor, whether it's desired, it doesn't mean that just because we want to do it, it's not tiring, right? We can love to show up emotionally for others and still feel like we're not getting the resources we need to remain in balance. So let's get a sense of what other clues we have coming in here. We have the Sun, which, makes me think about your self-development, right? You are the sun in your universe. All main character jokes aside, recognizing that if you're not balanced, then your ability to be there emotionally for others will suffer. So remembering your own self is what I get here. Gemini, some Gemini component of your month comes to fruition. This is likely connected to your 2nd house, some sort of resources coming through. Interesting to think about that Mercury stationing in your 1st house is going to be ruling your 2nd house. So what energy in your 1st house depletes the resources in your 2nd house? And if you are familiar with traditional astrology, you may recognize that we don't see the 2nd house very easily. So what we see is in the 1st house, and there may be something that we're overextending in the 1st house that depletes our sense of resources in the 2nd house. We also have lucky number 7 here, which I love. And so do with that number what you will, but know that it will be a significant number in this cycle for you. Seeing that we're learning how to attain temperance certainly gives me clues about what is asking to be realigned or brought into consciousness for you, as well as perhaps exchanging or engaging rather in the exchange of mentoring or leading. The Hierophant shows us when we are either stepping into a role of teaching or when we are receiving that teaching from others. And this sort of gives me the sense that there's a bit of both. Where can you shift into receiving from others, and where can you shift into giving to others? Recognizing the ebb and flow of your energy, the natural flux of who you are and what you have to give, can be very helpful to lining up our conscious and unconscious drives in the chariot over the course of the year. Welcome, Gemini. Your 12th house of deep subconscious, as well as how you make meaning of the world, is full of activity this month. This is where the sun, as well as the new moon, will be taking place, as well as Mercury's retrograde. So there's a lot buried beneath the surface, perhaps, that is asking to be recognized, acknowledged, integrated for you this season. We have Mars in second, squaring Chiron on your 11th, showing us where your need for resources may interfere with or cause conflict with your ability to trust the future, your ability to find community, your ability to articulate and live fully in your hopes and dreams for the future. We have a final Scorpio eclipse wrapping up in your 6th house. This means you've been learning lots about time, routine, your physical health, how your emotions impact your body. And so this is bringing in a lot of clarity about what you want for yourself moving forward. We see Venus moving into your 2nd house, bringing you opportunities for resources. We see Jupiter moving into your 12th house, bringing an abundance and a hopefulness to that subconscious space, fully opening up a lot of opportunity in how you make meaning of the world. We have this new moon in your 12th house where you're invited to come up with new resources you may be interested in providing yourself or otherwise seeking out regarding how you take care of your mental health. And we have Mars moving into your 3rd, your local environment, your neighborhood, your mind, your peers, maybe showing you where you want to stand out from other people. So let's take a look at what we've got in store for you this season. Okay. Well, we have 2 kings and a 2. How funny. So, I love this. I definitely see the King of Swords connecting with what we've said about the 12th house. The 12th house is known traditionally as the house of undoing. It is where our mental health may either become solidified or may become undone. This is where we may experience feelings of isolation, where we are struggling to create meaning out of our experiences in terms of what it all adds up to in the end. And so it makes a lot of sense to see so much activity coming into this space, bringing you to a new level of mastery over your mind. The King of Swords shows us when we are stepping into sort of the end of a journey. The swords is one of the most treacherous suits, and so the king is a welcome sign. We love to see us rising above what has previously plagued us, and Mercury in retrograde may go ahead and bring some of those ancient wounds or ancient fears, whatever is lingering behind you, kind of over your shoulder, that needs to be integrated and processed, will come up this month. We see the King of Cups too. It shows us an emotional mastery. So as you are stepping into this mastery of your mind, there's a simultaneous call for emotional mastery. We can see those two sort of processes working in tandem. I love thinking about those 2 processes as the 2 processes of the chariot. So we see where this ties into this broader theme. One being the mind, one being the heart. Often we are torn between them. What if we could honor both? Maybe that's a question that you are asking yourself this Taurus season. What does it look like for me to speak to both? How can I learn, Hierophant, to tend to both of these needs? Perhaps you see yourself moving through one of these processes on your own, and you are guiding someone or guided by someone along the journey of the other process. It's hard to do these things on our own. We need each other. The 12th house is a space where we feel very isolated, and so it's quite helpful to have someone present with us, whether, again, being someone who we are sharing our process with, or being someone who is able to guide us through their process in order to create a sense of understanding of this otherwise mysterious space. Two of Wands shows me that as this process is unfolding, there is an inquiry about where you want to go next. That maybe has you thinking about Mars moving into your third. Perhaps this question becoming clearer to you towards the end of the season, especially since the new moon is there at the end of the season. And as you align these processes, as you step into this clarity and this robust ability to hold and contain, you may see yourself starting over. You may see yourself seeking out new pathways. This makes so much sense because the Chariot is sort of the vehicle that moves us forward. So as these are aligning, you may see yourself moving closer to what that looks like for you. Let's go ahead and see what other clues we have. We have the South Node coming up. That really amplifies what we just said about that final Scorpio eclipse coming up. Perhaps there is something that you're able to release from your sense of routine that you no longer need to be responsible for, and that frees you up in this capacity to move forward. We have Libra here, which for you, Gemini, is your 5th house of love, of self-expression. And so you may see activity lighting up there for you. And we have the number 3. I will leave that to you to decide what that means for you this month, but know that the number 3 is significant. All right, Cancer. We've got moon phases happening in your succedent houses, 2, 5, 8, 11, showing us where you are putting into motion the efforts and energy to continue what you have moving. We have the sun entering your 11th house, opening you up to new possibilities. And this is where Mercury is also stationing retrograde, showing you perhaps new insights into what you want your future to look like, what you want your friend groups and communities to look like. We have Pluto stationing retrograde in the 8th, as well as Mars in your 1st, squaring Chiron in your 10th, perhaps showing you frustrations you carry around how you assert yourself and how that allows you to show up in your workspaces, in your sense of legacy and your contribution to the world. We have a final Scorpio eclipse in your 5th house. Congratulations, boo. Expressing yourself has been difficult for the past 18 months. You've been chasing out ghosts from how you offer love to people. We see Venus moving into your 1st house, bringing sweetness to you now, bringing connection. And we have Jupiter moving into your 11th house, which is its house of joy. Jupiter here is able to be recognized by its friends, by its community, for its contributions, for its skills and talents. And this is where the new moon will light up for you also, providing you possibility to begin new cycles here. Lastly, we have Mars moving into your 2nd house, showing that you are eager to make headway in terms of how you earn money, how you demonstrate your skills, and how you assert your sense of value. So let's get a sense of what this season has in store for you. all court cards for you this month, Cancer. Very fascinating. Okay, so you'll maybe hear sometimes that court cards represent you, court cards represent other people. Some people have a rule that the first court card is you and the other court cards are other people. Let's get a little clear on what this might look like. This tells me there's a lot of people at the table this month. This tells me there's a lot of maybe roles that you need to play. If this is all you, then you feel responsible for showing up in different ways this month. If this is other people, then perhaps you have others coming in to assist in some way. I love the Queen of Cups. The Queen of Cups shows that we are creating space for our emotions. It shows that we have developed a process for how we sit with and accept our feelings. That's important for you, Cancer, because you are ruled by the moon, and therefore you are ruled by emotions to some degree. You are guided by the ebb and flow of human nature. So it's important for you to have this sort of protocol established. If this is something that sounds familiar that you've been working on, know that this is a month where you really see this show up for you as affirmation of the efforts you've made. If this does not sound like something you've established, know that this will be the focus of this month for you. Know that it's time for you to hone in on what these needs look like. What would it need to look like for you to be comfortable in your own feelings, no matter what they are? The Page of Cups shows us some sort of incoming insight. Now, this one is the card that maybe affiliates the least with having to be a person. The page shows us perhaps a state of being. This shows us inspiration showing up, new ideas coming in. It could absolutely be in the form of a person. You could be the page, and as you spend time sitting with your feelings, being comfortable with who you are, and allowing this flow to naturally occur, the more you do this, the more you may find insights arriving from this place of calm. You may engage with people who show up as the Page of Cups for you, providing you with maybe spontaneous opportunity for growth, spontaneous chances to feel new things. And this all ties into the King of Pentacles in some capacity. Maybe in sitting with our feelings, we feel more capable of taking responsibility, not only for ourselves, but for what we want, for what we're trying to grow. This points my attention to the square from Mars in your first to Chiron in your 10th. It has been difficult and painful at times to assert what kind of legacy you want to leave here with Chiron up there. Chiron bringing to your attention the wounds that you feel about these attempts to make yourself known in some capacity. The wounding of being known by others and having people be able to speak to who you are. These are all things that can upset some of the emotions that are present here with the cups that we see. So I get an idea here that even if this represents other people, even if the King of Pentacles represents other people, you might find yourself identifying the most with the Queen of Cups. I would say focusing on this process allows these others to unfold. Even if this is another person, if you are someone who's able to sit comfortably with your feelings, that may allow, again, inspiration and ideas to emerge, new opportunities to show up, and it may allow someone else to step into their role of responsibility. Things to consider. Let's take a look at what these dice have to say as we think about what this all means in the context of the Chariot and the Hierophant. The Hierophant shows us learning, right? We are establishing a sense of value. It might be that the more you learn about yourself and your feelings, the more you are able to stand tall in this sense, or again, allow someone else that you're in partnership with in some capacity to take on this responsibility. And the interplay here shows us a bit of the Hierophant, which is one of mentoring and being mentored. Whether we are the mentor or the mentee, or we trade off in some capacity, we definitely need feelings to be understood and spoken for in order for tangible growth to occur. And aligning these processes, the earthly earthly over here and the water over here, shows us a bit of the dual process present in the chariot. We need conscious and unconscious energies to align in order to move forward the most fluidly we can. And we have Neptune, okay? We have the number 2, and we have Aquarius. Aquarius representing your 8th house, showing us where Pluto is, and perhaps that Pluto comes into play quite a bit as Pluto merges with your house of psychology. You are getting to know this more and seeing how it impacts the rest of this. Neptune, absolutely, hanging out in your 9th house of beliefs. So it might be that the more you are able to create the space for this emotional process, the more you're able to tune into some of that otherworldly goodness, as well as getting clear on where you feel clouded from your emotions. And I love the number 2 here because it really adds another layer to this sense of interplay that I just spoke to. Cancer, you are someone who responds to others around you. You need to feel needed. And so this shows us the importance of this process for you this month in order to achieve that sense of symbiosis with another. Okay, Leo. Now, all of this Taurus activity is taking place in your 10th house, which means your reputation, your legacy, your contribution to the world, the traditions that you carry forth into the world are all being lit up for you this season. We'll have all the moon phases in your angular houses, meaning you might be really compelled this month to take action at these moon phases. We have the sun meeting the north node in your 10th house. We have Mercury retrograde in your 10th house. We've got Mars moving into Leo, your 1st house at the very, very end of Taurus season. Pluto then stationing retrograde in your 7th house of relationships, where you just had Saturn finally clear out. We have our long-awaited final Scorpio full moon eclipse in your 4th house of home, emotions, and how they sit within the body, privacy, and quiet for you. So you'll be wrapping up some lessons that you've been moving through for the past 18 months there. And finally, we'll have Jupiter moving into your 10th house, bringing some fanfare to everything I said before about career and legacy. And we have Venus moving into your 12th house, bringing your attention to taking care of your kind of behind the scenes needs, considering what you might want to bring in to help affirm mental health, what kind of meaning you're making out of what you've experienced so far this year, what it all adds up to down the line, and where you want to bolster your own sense of self. Let's get a look at what the cards have to say about what's coming in for you this season. Wow. I want to say that there's some competing energies present here with the Empress and the Tower. And the Eight of Cups sees us maybe sailing away from something. So the Empress represents Venus in tarot, in the major arcana. So we're going to imagine that Venus's moves through your 12th house are going to be really critical to what this month brings to you. Makes a lot of sense because Venus is ruling this Taurus season, and so while all of those visible parts of you are what's being lit up, they're all being ruled by Venus, who's moving through a much more private space, a much more quiet space. And so your mental health, what I mentioned just a moment ago, being connected to the 12th house is going to be really important to how this Taurus season shows up for you. We can see the Tower is here. Beneath this otherwise calm exterior, this grounded feeling of fertility, whatever that means to you, this lush landscape that becomes firm and is therefore available to foster growth. The Tower threatens to bring that all down. The Tower is the other side of this coin, perhaps, where we see destruction, we see disruption, we see upset. This is quite literally Venus and Mars. Mars moving into Leo, finishing up things in your first house, your 12th house rather, where Venus will be moving. We might have stirred up a lot with Mars having all of these contentious squares from your 12th house, really upsetting your sense of mental health, your sense of calm. Venus, Mars may be showing a battle of the wills this month. Again, Mars is going to move into your first at the very, very end of Taurus season and immediately oppose Pluto in your 7th house. That's going to bring up a lot of power dynamics, a lot of who's right and who's wrong, a lot of will you let me stand here and be myself, or will you try to force me to change? These are very Venus-Mars themes. The Eight of Cups reveals to us that perhaps Taurus season has you, again, sailing away from something that you had emotionally invested in. The 8 leads us to the 9, which is where we have some sort of wish fulfillment occur because we've done the hard work of stepping away from something that was no longer fulfilling us. What holds us to this situation is the emotional component. We feel like we've spent so much time here. We feel like we've invested so much emotionally. We've been a part of this and it is now a part of us. And so to walk away feels extremely difficult. Yet we kind of see these birds flying off into the distance, sort of leaving to find what they need. We see the sun setting on this particular situation. I invite you this month to kind of get familiar with these processes, get familiar with where you feel connected to the Empress versus where you feel connected to the Tower. These are both major arcana cards, connecting us back to the theme of the month, the Hierophant, where we are seeking mentorship or providing mentorship. We are attuning to some sort of traditional structure in order to hold us in some way. And the Chariot, the card of the year, showing us where we are trying to align some conscious and unconscious forces in order to be able to move forward in full clarity. This feels like what those two forces may be right now. Which one is conscious and which one is subconscious, and where do they trade? What happens when one of them takes over, right? All kind of connecting us to this deeper alignment that we're seeking in order to kind of steer the vessel on a single path rather than splitting our roads. We have Venus here, so quite literally showing us the importance of Venus. Maybe that means we're learning to temper some of our Mars. We have 9, which I mentioned follows the 8. That kind of feels like a great omen. And we have Virgo, thinking about the sign just past you, maybe thinking about some of that earth element. This is trine, all of this in Taurus. And so get a sense of what Virgo represents for you and see if that connects to what we're trying to ground into this month. Virgo. All right. Taurus season is when the sun moves through its house of joy for you. The sun loves the 9th house, and so Taurus season is lighting up your 9th house of seeing ourselves in the world, of learning about other cultures, of travel, of higher education, of our philosophies. And so this is where we see Jupiter ingressing. This is also sort of a natural placement for Jupiter. So you'll see those themes expand even more when Jupiter moves in. We'll have the North Node meeting the Sun in this house. We'll also have Mercury retrograde in this 9th house space. This means we've got Pluto stationing retrograde in your 6th house, maybe revealing to you things about your body, your time, your routine. We have Mars in your 11th house squaring Chiron in the 8th, maybe revealing to us where efforts we're making toward the future, efforts we make towards our hopes and dreams clashing with resources we share with another, the needs of those that we share space with. We see a final Scorpio eclipse happening in your third house. This final full moon eclipse revealing to you what you've released in the third house over the past 18 months. And that means that Mars will be moving into your 12th house, getting clear on that mental health space, bringing to your attention maybe outlying themes that need your attention here. So let's get a look at what the cards have to say about what's in store for you this season. Okay. So we have the star, which is what we see after we emerge from the rubble of the tower. The star shows us seeing ourselves authentically, emerging in a successful manner. Maybe this connects with the 9th house activities taking place. I think the sun really loves to be in the 9th house because from there it's able to see the ascendant and see where we're going, see what we want to open up to in order to make space for the ascendant to move in that way. And so I love thinking of the star in this way. We're kind of, again, rising up. That's certainly a 9th house feeling. We are lifting up out of sort of what was. Oh, that also makes me think about what I just said about the final eclipse in your 3rd house, sort of rising up into the 9th house, looking down at what was in the 3rd house and remembering who we were at some point and who we've become in this time. This leads naturally into the Lovers, which can, on one hand, show us where we are connecting with someone outside of ourselves, someone who feels like some sort of soulmate or other half. And that might be some of Venus moving into your 11th house, connecting you with lots of people. But I also think of the Lovers as a reconnection to self, similar to the Chariot and why they are sort of sequential here in the tarot. The Lovers is represented by Gemini, and it shows where we are multifaceted beings having energy on Earth as well as energy outward in the ether, and how we work to ground what we discover in the ether, what we explore in the ether, and how we build that into the mundane here on Earth. So I love seeing these very triumphant energies for you and thinking about how they connect to this bigger lesson of aligning our conscious and subconscious energies, getting clear on our shadow processes so that we can move forward in full clarity and alignment. This feels really important to this lesson. The 7 of Swords typically is described as someone's going to come and swindle you. Someone's going to try to get away with something. You're the one trying to get away with something. I've come to think of the 7 of Swords as an indicator of imposter syndrome, where we are the one undermining ourselves, or we are the one who may be succumbing to some sharp thoughts that exist in the world around us. We might be looking at ourselves through the same lens as the lens that the world chooses to see us through, and that's never fair. I don't know when that's fair, but I've never seen it. So if you've ever dealt with this, here you are now. So I'm getting a sense of maybe the conditions of the world we're in, the definitions of how the world sees us, coloring this process for ourselves, maybe interfering with or trying to interfere with this process of wholeness. Swords tend to try to slice us away from something. And so where do intrusive thoughts about your own skills and your own right to your knowledge and your experience undermine your sense of really knowing and integrating yourself, your shadow processes here, and ultimately being able to emerge triumphant? The Hierophant here shows maybe you want to seek the guidance or insight of someone who's been through something like this before. The 9th house, again, being the house of higher learning, where we go to seek out new knowledge. Perhaps you also possess some of this knowledge that might be helpful to someone else who's navigating these circumstances. But I love this for you, and let's see what the dice have to say about this. We've got the number 3, which feels very interesting and very much like a process. We have these sort of 2 parts, but the third part being the process itself, the third part being this space between them in which they are integrating, the third part being sort of the wholeness of integrating these 2 parts. We have Venus and we have Capricorn showing up. And this is interesting. We might be working hard, or let's step back from capitalistic interpretations of this. We might be thinking about what structures hold us, and we might be thinking about who we want to connect to. This makes me think of Venus moving into your 11th. What kind of community do we want to connect with here? What does this show you about who you're becoming and what it is that you are sort of surmounting at this time? Libra, step right up. All right, our other Venusian ruled sign. This month's moon phases will be taking place in your sextant houses. This is your 2nd, your 5th, your 8th, and your 11th houses. We have the Sun, the North Node, and Mercury all moving through your 8th house now, including Mercury's retrograde. We have Pluto stationing retrograde in your 5th house of self-expression, of love, of attraction. We have Mars making that tough square from your 10th house to your 7th house. So your house of legacy and reputation into your house of one-on-one relationships, business partners, love interests. We have a final Scorpio eclipse taking place in your 2nd house. This is awesome. You're wrapping up a narrative about your resources, your values. You've got Venus moving into your 10th house, which is significant for you being Venusian ruled. We've got Jupiter moving into your 8th house, and we've got Mars moving into your 11th house of community, friends, as well as hopes and dreams for the future. So let's take a look at what the cards have to say about what Taurus season is going to be bringing up for you. Okay, 9 of Pentacles, the Devil, and the 6 of Swords. Okay, interesting energies we have here. I think the 9 of Pentacles and the 6 of Swords are a bit antithetical. In one case, we have us firmly rooted in place, taking a look at all that we've accumulated. All of the hard work that we've been doing is paying off. We're able to admire everything we've built for ourselves. And so this has us assessing our tangible resources. This has us feeling hopefully pleased about what it is that we see we're building up here. On the other side, we see the 6 of Swords telling us that we're stepping away from something. We are this tiny figure on the motorcycle taking this road to some destination far away from where we've been rooted in place. So these are interesting energies. They contradict a bit, and that kind of lines up with some of what we see in the broader theme of the Chariot, with conscious and unconscious forces becoming aligned so that we can move forward. Perhaps the Devil will show us more about what these cards have to say to us. The Devil showing us once more where we need to separate from something that is causing us harm, that we've been telling ourselves we are bound to, that perhaps we are actually not. So there may be something here this month that becomes clear to us, especially with so much activity happening in the 8th house. This is our kind of subconscious space. This is where we share resources with another. This is where we are impacted by others' moves, needs, motivations. We might be in a situation right now where we need to get clear on what it is we're actually responsible for and what it is we need to remain bound to. In some sense, what we're bound to may be holding us back from being able to fully appreciate what we've been accumulating. Perhaps something we're bound to is compelling us to go because there's no peace to be had. So, interesting to think about the Devil here being the only major arcana card. The Hierophant showing us where we are seeking something traditional and structural outside of us, whether we are teaching someone or someone is teaching us something. I certainly, again, highlighted where these themes sort of replicate what we see in the Chariot. We have Pluto. So perhaps Pluto's retrograde in your 5th house is going to be really significant. Perhaps there's some form of self-expression or some power to how you self-express that you've never felt before that's been activated at this time. Perhaps this allows you to look back and see all this progress you've made as a person that maybe you weren't aware of. And maybe it's bringing to your attention what is next for you to step back from or to recognize has a hold on you that you don't actually want to have a hold on you. 12. Whatever this number means to you, I'm drawn to the 12th house, which is Virgo, and Mercury's retrograde in your 8th house will certainly be sending information to this 12th house space. That certainly gives me ideas about the Devil, because these bonds, and these entities we feel bound to run deep within us very psychologically. So keep track of that 12th house space. Make note of what things you are unraveling that have to do with some of how you take mental health care, some of the resources that you give yourself when you are alone in order to feel safe. And we have Scorpio, which makes me think about, again, that 2nd house Scorpio full moon eclipse. We're wrapping up a story here about what you own, what you have, what skills are available to you, and perhaps reflecting on those skills allows for this kind of reflection that maybe enables you to step away from something that you think you've otherwise had to be bound to. Okay, Scorpio, step right up. Scorpio, we've got moon phases happening in your angular houses, 1st, 4th, 7th, 10th. All of your angles are lit up. Your drive, your compulsion to act has been ignited. Okay, these cards though. Okay, so we've got the sun meeting up with the North Node in your 7th house of relationships, revealing to you lessons that you've been learning here over the past 18 months. We also have Mercury retrograde in your 7th house, maybe helping us wrap up any final details here that we need to take note of. We have this rough and tumble Mars square Chiron happening from your 9th house of beliefs, higher learning, into your 6th house of body, time, and routine. This final Scorpio eclipse is happening in your 1st house, so I just want to celebrate you. You are recapping what you've learned and released from your sense of self. Venus moving into your 9th, opening you up to new perspectives, new cultures, people from faraway places. You've got Jupiter moving into your 7th house, perhaps bringing you some relational abundance in the wake of all the lessons that you've learned there. And Mars will be moving into your 10th house of reputation, of legacy, contribution to this world. And you are likely to be interested in now making strides toward establishing yourself in some big way here. Pluto, meanwhile, stationing retrograde in your 4th house, asking you to look at where power lives within you. So let's see what these cards have to say. All right, off with a bang. Oh, this is fun. This feels like a fun little sequence. We have a story here. The story begins with the magician who has something lining up in such a way that allows for successful implementation or initiation now. You've got all the tools that you need to bring something together. Fun that Mercury is the planet that is highlighted here, and it might be that Mercury retrograde in your 7th house brings something to fruition. We kind of see that in the 5 of Wands, which shows us where we are stepping into a bit of our competitive edge. The 5 of Wands is where we meet others at the table. We're a contender. We're gonna step in and dip into the fire with the rest of those who are strong and want to compete. So We have our tools lined up. We've got everything working out for us to begin something. Mercury retrograde in your 7th house, perhaps bringing you into the field with others, seeing who your competitors may be, seeing who your collaborators may be, getting a sense of what the field looks like. The 8 of Pentacles showing us the tangible work, right? This is a major arcana card. This is a fire card. So we're looking at passion and the idea, or the initiation of something, and the Pentacles showing us the hard work of putting ideas into practice. So we are starting something this month. We are showing up into spaces with others who are also starting something, and we are putting in the practice to nail this process so that we are able to meet our results and recognize what we are capable of. This is really beautiful because we see this as a streamlining process. This is where we've gotten to the point where I have the formula down. In the 7, we are testing it, okay? And in the 8, we're like, yeah, that worked out. So I am just putting pedal to the metal and I am getting these cranked out. Maybe you're making something from start to finish this season. There's a lot of energy here. Let's see what these dice have to say about what else we have going on. But in terms of how this fits into the Chariot, we can definitely see that this might be a time for you where you've gotten this alignment in place. It looks like things are moving forward. So perhaps, again, with the narrative of the South Node and these final full moon eclipse points coming up for you to reflect upon, maybe getting a sense of, okay, I've done a lot of this work and I'm feeling these mechanisms begin to work in tandem. You see the Hierophant here. Perhaps you are able to make all of this happen through the lens of some mentorship, or perhaps you have this process down to the point where you're able to offer guidance to other people. We have the number 11. We have Venus and we have Gemini. Okay. We definitely know that Venus is still in Gemini before moving into Cancer, and this is some of your 8th house space. It might be that some of this alignment, again, is happening in real time, and we see something manifesting from this process. We can also think about Venus moving into the 9th and being able to broadcast some of this process that you are in the midst of, getting some of the information out. So take note of these and let's see how this unfolds over the season. Okay, Sagittarius, let's take a look at your Taurus season. This Taurus season means the sun is moving through your 6th house, which is where it will meet up with the North Node, and also where Mercury is retrograde. This 6th house is your house of time, routine, health, and the body, and what we are in service to. So you may have questions come up about perhaps your day-to-day work life. Maybe there's a change in your schedule. Maybe there are health themes coming up that you want to be mindful of, that you become aware of at this time. We've got Pluto stationing retrograde in your 3rd house of mind, immediate environment, and communication. So there may be a physical shift as well as kind of a mental shift in this process. We've got this tough Mars square Chiron taking place from your 8th house of intimacy, of power, of secrets, shared resources, to your 5th house of love, affection, self-expression. And so there may be interpersonal tensions this month that you're working through. We have a final Scorpio full moon eclipse taking place in your 12th house of mental health, of isolation, of what it all really adds up to. This makes me think that you are celebrating some big cathartic processes that you've moved through in the past 18 months. Venus moving into your 8th house, bringing some sweetness, bringing some connection, right? Bringing some kindness. We have Jupiter moving into the 6th, which means that there may be an abundance of work opportunity. We have Mars moving into your 9th, showing where you may be looking to defend some of the ideas you've put into the world, defend your work, defend your perspective, and maybe stand out from some of the other messages that abound this season. So, taking a look now at what themes these cards are bringing up for us. Okay, right away, I'm thinking about this eclipse in your 12th house. Okay. Oh, I like this. This tells us a little bit of a story here. We've got the Death card showing us absolutely that we're moving through some potent transformation. The only way out is through. It may feel terrifying, but again, I'm called to think about this final eclipse in your 12th house. So I don't think that this is perhaps anything new that's coming up. This may just be the final push through this tunnel, through this sort of this birth canal of being reborn in this new way, releasing so many elements of the past. And with that comes the Three of Swords. We can see that if we're in these final throes of a transformative journey, with it comes a little bit of pain, but the 3 is the catharsis of the pain. If we think about the sequence, the ace is first and we are bombarded by new information. The 2 is where we are paralyzed by fear because we don't know what to do with that information. And the 3 shows that we have finally made a choice. And there's no good choice when we're looking at the swords. There is only what is right and what is hard, and what is quote unquote wrong, and what will only continue the possibility of enduring pain and of future pain. So there's going to be some sort of sharpness when we come into the swords. What choice you make with the information that is causing this pain allows you to experience this release. So meeting this kind of pain in the moment, being open with it and allowing it to move you in a genuine way will certainly bring pain in that moment, but it also creates the opportunity to finally release that and move forward. And what happens when we do that? The Page of Pentacles arrives. We have new ideas emerging from the ether. We have new possibilities. This can be financial opportunities, but this is also just physical experiences that are opening up for us at this time. We have something mental happening here, something happening within our headspace, and when we move through it, it allows for new physical experiences, new tangible senses awakening, perhaps. So, thinking about how this ties into the Chariot, this feels like a really pivotal moment in the process of realigning these forces, bringing something from the subconscious to the surface to be made conscious is painful. But in doing so, we finally allow these energies to align in such a way that they can begin working together. The more we suppress that pain or ignore that pain, the less direction we actually have to move ahead here, because we're not really acknowledging the full story. And the Hierophant here showing us that we may call on something outside of ourselves to support us in this process. This is where we seek out the guidance of another. We could also be providing that guidance to someone, and perhaps that's where the Page of Pentacles sort of changes this story. But it may be that you seek out help first to move through this, recognize something within you that becomes empowered, and to find the opportunity to pay that lesson forward to someone else. We have the Sun, which I love. Just thinking about the Sun in terms of tarot. We move through the Moon and it is terrifying and emotionally confounding, and then we emerge more authentic. That's bringing me kind of this energy here. We have Gemini, which shows us maybe someone in your 7th house space, right? Maybe this Hierophant role for you. And the number 10, which makes me think about career, makes me think about legacy, makes me think about perhaps what this shapes up to. It's also the number of completion, right? This is the 10 is the end of the suits in the minor suits. So it makes me think about you getting a sense of what has become whole and being able to look forward from this place. Hello, Capricorn. Step right up and let's take a look at what Taurus season has in store for you. Capricorn, these moon phases will be moving through your succedent houses. This is 2, 5, 8, and 11. We've got the Sun moving through your 5th house, meeting up with the North Node, and this is where Mercury will be retrograde, meaning that we'll be seeing various forms of self-expression begin to change for you. getting a sense of what these North Node journeys have been about over the past 18 months, how you express yourself, how you offer your love to others, and what play looks like for you. We have Pluto stationing retrograde in your second house, and so far you've been learning things about where the power in your talents and skills lies, where you have earning power and potential. We've got Mars making this crunchy square to Chiron from your 7th house of one-on-one relationships, be they business or romantic, into your very tender, very private 4th house of self and emotion and home. We have a final Scorpio eclipse in your 11th house. Perhaps you have seen friendships leave in this time. You've separated from groups or communities. You've taken a step back from certain causes. And you're finally getting a sense of what's ready to go in this space now. Venus moving into your 7th, bringing some sweetness into that place of one-on-one connection. Jupiter moving into your 5th, perhaps bringing some robustness to your self-expression. And we have Mars moving into your 8th, showing you perhaps where you stand out from those you share intimate spaces with, showing us where you may have conflict with others that is ready to be felt and expressed in some capacity. So let's take a look at what these cards have in store for you regarding Taurus season. Okay. All right. So we have some tangible and we have some very intangible. I love this, and as a Capricorn rising myself, I have to laugh. So on one hand, we have the Two of Pentacles, which is a very foundational card. This is all about balance of the simplest order. What am I trying to accomplish in my day-to-day, and what resources do I have to provide access to success here? What am I trying to grow outward toward the sun, right? What am I trying to become outwardly? And how equal are my efforts to root myself into stability to support this growth? We need to pay attention to this month. I love that Mercury is retrograde in an earth sign, trining our earth sign Capricorn, as well as trining and ruling the other earth sign Virgo, rather. And so we need this energy because the moon is going to slow us down, is going to really confuse us about where we are going. We do not know. That might be connected to that final Scorpio eclipse in the 11th house of hopes and dreams for the future. We are clearing things up in that space, but we may not know what goes in there yet. We'll learn more about that as Mars moves through your 8th house, showing you perhaps the nature of your intimate bonds, your shared resources. And that may have some say over kind of what the 11th house looks like. So we don't really know where we're going right now. We may be compelled to speed through this, and that's a mistake. This is why we have the Two of Pentacles, because in our confusion, we are still compelled to initiate something, to be doing something, to be productive, and that's going to lead us to burnout. What's important is to focus back on the basics. Where am I trying to grow, and how can I assign equal care into where I've come from, into where I rest, right, Capricorn? Because we're always going somewhere, okay? But where have we come from? How are we giving ourselves earth? How are we giving ourselves soil and rest and nutrients to support that? When in doubt, come back to this too. What might be coming through is that in this confusion, we're actually accessing some sort of download, some sort of big master vision, right? The King of Wands shows us when we are mastering our curiosity, our passion, our sense of hunger and drive, we are getting really clear on not only what our vision is, sort of our celestial map, if you will, but also how we can lead others to that place. This is a big process happening. And so it kind of makes sense that we would have some blinders on, if you will, in this Taurus season during this month. Again, Mercury being retrograde, ruling our 9th house of faraway places, of higher education, of sort of mass messages. We may not know what it is that we're trying to put out there just yet. It will come to us if we give ourselves the space and the patience, the time to slow down and not speed through this process. I love thinking about how this ties into the Chariot, thinking about how we are aligning some deeper subconscious processes this month, and that is all part of the Chariot process. So there's something happening in our unconscious space that needs to work itself out, that needs to become clearer. And again, if we try to push past that, that shows us directly where the Chariot has us driving by the will of one character rather than both conscious and unconscious forces working together. So let's go ahead and roll some dice. And while we do, we'll think about the Hierophant. We may seek out some sort of traditionally structured guidance this month as we don't know where we're going. Perhaps we want to call upon something, whether it be a person, a mentor, or be it some sort of institution, a practice, right? Tradition doesn't need to be human. It can certainly just be a practice. Practices that bring us back to our Two of Pentacles. I just thought of something like yoga or exercise, something rooting in the body when we're feeling a little too cerebral, and that being allowing some sort of traditional format to support us in a time where we are a little bit wiggly jiggly, not quite fully baked in the center. And we have Neptune, which totally makes a lot of sense for this. We have Sagittarius, which shows us the King of Wands, absolutely. And if we think about where Neptune is right now, Neptune's in your 3rd house of the mind, right? 3rd house of immediate environment. And if we don't really know where we're going, that 3rd house is confused. We may have a lot of Neptune themes this month coming up. I don't really know where I'm trying to go. And Sagittarius is your 12th house of unconscious vision, what it all adds up to, what it means. Dreams start in the 12th house and are then described and labeled and translated in the 9th house. So it makes a lot of sense that we would need to just focus on the body, put yourself at number 1, focus on yourself and your tangible needs, while some uncertainty sort of just creates a fog and allows some potent downloads to come through. By the next season, after this whole movement kind of happens, there may be something that manifests during Gemini season in your 6th house of body and physical work and habit and routine. So allow that to download, and we'll see what happens next season. Okay, Aquarius, let's talk about what Taurus season has in store for you. This month's moon phases are happening in your angular houses 1, 4, 7, 10. You are compelled to act this month. You are connecting with your environment this month. You are able to make moves. The sun meeting up with the North Node in your 4th house, revealing to you lessons you've learned about your emotional realm, what your emotional body needs to feel safe and comforted. You also have Mercury retrograde through this space, perhaps bringing your attention to updates that want to be made here. We have Pluto stationing retrograde in your 1st house. You've spent the past couple of months learning about what power feels like within you, perhaps feeling some sources of power activated for the very first time, getting to know what that feels like and what that brings up for you. We have this crunchy Mars Chiron square happening from your 6th house of body, time, and routine, where Mars is in its joy, to Chiron in your 3rd house of mind and immediate environment and peers. Perhaps some tension between what you want to get done and what needs to get done, or what has been dictated to get done by someone else versus what we want to be doing on our own. We have the final Scorpio full moon eclipse in your 10th house. You've been releasing all kinds of stories about your legacy, about what traditions you are carrying forth into the world and what you feel like you're contributing here in your time in this body, in this lifetime. Venus moving into your 6th house, bringing some sweetness to your body, to your day-to-day life. Jupiter moving into your 4th house, perhaps bringing opportunities for moving or for bringing new sweetness into your home space. And we have Mars moving into your 7th house, perhaps showing you where you want to stand out amongst those you are in relationship with, or where you want to engage with others in assertive ways. So let's take a look at what the cards have in store for you for Taurus season. Okay, the 4 of Wands is so literal here. We've been talking about the 4th house, and this is it. So the 4 of Wands is really, you know, it correlates to Venus and Aries. It's all about wanting to celebrate, wanting to create 4 walls, some sort of foundation, very much signaling home, as well as other translations, wanting to dedicate a space to what we love, wanting to dedicate a space to what we cherish, wanting to concretize some foundation for us to share, right? Wands are our heart, they're our passion. And so 4 is structure, it's foundation. We're building walls that contain multitudes of emotion and love. This is beautiful for the 4th house activity that you've got going on. We have the 9 of Cups, which shows us where you may have a couple of wish cards to turn in this month, Aquarius. What have you walked away from that meant a lot to you because you knew that it wasn't right for you? And where are you able to begin celebrating by bringing in what is right for you? This is perhaps connected to Mercury retrograde, being able to summon that which will fulfill you at this time. Just being able to tap into more hopes and dreams for yourself. I love seeing the Emperor here. It shows us where we are establishing a sense of authority within ourselves. This is Aries related. Maybe that eclipse that just happened really activated something within you. Aries is your 3rd house of mind and immediate environment, and perhaps there's something connected here with creating space for what we feel passionate about, and that providing us a sense of structure and maybe even authority in how we move toward what we seek and how we invite others to kind of take in our path, become aware of where we're going. Seeing how this connects to the Chariot, perhaps there is a need for some sort of structure in order to allow for the subconscious, unconscious material to become conscious. And perhaps as we move through this really shows me, you know, this is the precedent to the Hierophant. And so it might be that the steps you take this month and the sense of authority you're able to step into really shows you kind of not only what you believe in and what sort of traditions and ideas support you, since we talked about that 10th house final Scorpio eclipse, but also how you want to be in service to allowing others to learn from that process. So let's see what these dice have to say. We've got Venus, which again certainly shows us that 4 of Wands. We've got a 4, so literal. I love that. That's pretty perfect. And then we've got Sagittarius, which I love. So Aquarius, thinking about Sagittarius for you, this is your, 11th house of friends, community, hopes and dreams for the future. And so that may be a big part of kind of creating this structure for the here and now, for what exists now and wants to thrive and grow, kind of opening up what we want to wish for the future. So, things to think about. Okay, Pisces, welcome. Let's take a look at what Taurus season has in store for you. Pisces, this month has the moon phases happening in your cadent houses. 3, 6, 9, 12. We've got the sun meeting up with the north node in your 3rd house of immediate environment, peers. We have Mercury also retrograde in this space, showing you where you perhaps want to rethink what you do during the day. This is a natural place for Mercury to be. So we might just be restructuring our ideas in some way, putting ideas to paper, or beginning some sort of anchoring these ideas in a tangible way. You've got Pluto stationing retrograde in your 12th house. So you've been learning about the power of your subconscious and unconscious spaces. Mars in 5th, making this very crunchy square to Chiron in your 2nd, showing you where you want to be able to play and gamble and take risks, but also feeling the pressure of being worried about where money is coming from or what skills we have to make it. We're having a final Scorpio eclipse in your 9th house. We're finally letting go some themes of our beliefs, of restructuring how we learn or where we want to be in the world. Venus moving into its joy in the 5th for you is beautiful. Just bringing a lot of sweetness to how you offer self-expression and love to others. Jupiter coming into the 3rd to bring new opportunities. And Mars moving into your 6th, which is its house of joy, showing where you are really a star in the work that you do on your own, perhaps, or being pivotal to your workplace in some capacity, really standing out and being able to put in that work that shows how you stand out in unique ways. So let's take a look at what these cards have to say about Taurus season for you. Okay. What an interesting sequence here that we kind of jump across not only suits, but also stages of the suit. We've got an early card, the 2. We're connecting one-on-one with people. We're thinking about what we want to feel when we connect with people. We're sharing, we're checking in. This feels very 3rd house, perhaps. Just being in conversation with those you share space with, getting a sense of how people are experiencing their time and their environment. The 4 of Pentacles showing us where we are interested in understanding what we're rooting into. We may feel, this kind of shows me a little bit about Chiron moving through the 2nd, we may feel that we don't have the space to move into what we're growing into. We may feel like we have to hold on to everything we have because we're not sure when there's going to be more. We may feel like we are bigger than our britches. And so this might be a time where you are conserving financially a bit or otherwise getting a sense of what you might need moving forward. The 10 of Swords, we recognize to be one of the most feared cards in the deck. It feels so betraying. It feels so just the worst case scenario. And there may be some of that in this card that's present. We mentioned that square between Mars and Chiron, and it may be that ultimately what I want to put into motion can't take shape right now, or I've tried to make something happen and this is a sign of its ultimate failure. That is one possibility. The 10 of Swords does certainly show us an ending. It is a big buildup to this ending. There is something being feared but being released once we reach this ending, because what we have feared this whole time has finally come to pass and we're able to move on. So it might be that we are connecting with other people about some of these feelings that are happening or whatever is taking place here. If we feel like we don't have enough, it may feel like this is looming. And so that might be a call to check in with someone one-on-one and to just share about what's going on. I love kind of thinking about, this shows us that light is emerging at the end of this sort of worst case scenario where we're able to see the sun rise once more and move forward. And I like thinking about this rainbow also being a version of this light that's emerging, being something that connects us to another, that helps pull us out of this feeling of plight, perhaps, or of hopelessness. Thinking about the Chariot, this may be something we need to go through and just experience in order to recognize what is subconscious and buried within us that needs to be brought to the surface. And the Hierophant shows us that this person we want to connect with one-on-one may be someone who can mentor us through this process, or who can otherwise give us material to work with to help us ground this journey. We have Taurus quite literally right here, and we have Uranus. So we know Uranus is moving through Taurus in real time, and it might be that something Uranus related is connected to this 10 of Swords. It may be that Uranus brings some sort of surprise. I will say that Mercury is going to go over Uranus while in retrograde, and it might be that when this happens, something is brought to your attention that changes everything as you knew it. Taurus showing us where we want to root, where we are concerned with tangible resources, and also showing us the 3rd house where we see other people, where we want to connect with people, right? And I like the number 11. It certainly feels like a lucky number 11, especially in the context of what we have here. And so this may be kind of a secret weapon in your back pocket. It might be that things seem stressful or seem like they're over in some way, and there may be something just beyond that pulls you back from the edge in some capacity, or that gives you an edge over the situation that's unfolding here as it is, and as I just mess up these dice. Hello, Aries. I know you're not used to being last. Thank you for taking one for the team this time around. Let's dig into it. Aries, these moon phases this month will be happening in your succedent houses 2, 5, 8, and 11. Bringing to your attention perhaps what needs to be continued in order to move forward. We have the sun moving through your 2nd house, where it will meet up with the North Node, highlighting to you lessons you've been learning about your skills, your values, what's important to you, and what you feel you own at this time. We have Pluto stationing retrograde in your 11th house. You're thinking about the power that you have in community. You're thinking about the power that you carry into building a future. You're thinking about hopes and dreams and what power it may take to build them. We have this crunchy Mars Chiron square happening from your very tender, private 4th house space of home and feelings to your 1st house of self, where Chiron is impacting how you think you're able to move through the world. We are celebrating a final Scorpio full moon eclipse taking place in your 8th house, where you've been releasing lots of attachment of others to others, a lot of shared energy and space being freed up. Venus moving into your 4th house to bring sweetness into your home space, bringing some softness to your emotions. Jupiter moving into your 2nd, perhaps highlighting financial opportunities in that 2nd house of skills and talents. And Mars moving into your 5th house, where it hopes to be able to take a chance, stand out creatively perhaps, and express yourself quite firmly, if you will. So let's take a look at what these cards have to say about Taurus season for you, Aries. Okay. So lots of wands. Okay, so the High Priestess shows us some sort of deepening of our intuition at this time. This is making me think about your 4th house a little bit, thinking about some of the Mars activity that gets stirred up in that square, but then having Venus come through and bring some softness here, especially since this is Cancer, and that's a very natural sign to have on the cusp of the 4th house of home. And so really bringing some peace to your emotional state, perhaps allowing you to connect more deeply to intuitive spaces. This also feels connected to this final eclipse in your 8th house. Just being in the process of purging our psychological space for a year and a half, really freeing up room for you to get a sense of what your intuition tells you now. The eighth house is where we sense other people, and that's been programmed by many events that have taken place in your life that you've had to get clear on in the past 18 months. And so what is allowed to be heard within you now that a lot of that programming and those stories have been cleared out? The Ten of Wands shows us where you might be burned out a little bit, Aries. What? No way. Guided by a Mars that has been fighting hard in Cancer. Maybe that you've been doing a lot for others. You've had to pick up a lot of slack for other people. You've been nurturing a lot of people and hoping to get reciprocation. And perhaps this is a month where you need a break. You want to get clear on kind of what's pushing you to burn out so that you can tend to that energy before it gets to you. This fire is what drives the wand suit, and yet it is also what threatens to consume the very vessel that it lives in. And so it's up to you now to take time to check in with these driving forces and to get a sense of maybe what can take a break at this time. What can I delegate to someone else? What is absolutely necessary of me at this time? And allowing our intuition to guide that process. The Seven of Wands showing us that we are able and eager to defend our honor. We have made it far into the suit of the Wands. We have proven ourselves a number of times at this point, and others want what we have now. Others want to either tear us down out of anger or jealousy or envy, or they want to dethrone us so they can take our place. Either way, this is something we need to tend to, and we're going to need energy to do so. This is where we've gone too far, and this is the fight that we're trying to keep in mind. So using our intuitive powers as they become available to us to rest in stillness is a high priestess vibe. Okay, we're not acting yet. We are sitting in stillness and scanning ourselves to get a sense of what we know about this situation to decide how we're going to move forward. That's going to help us decide when we need to chill before the fire burns us from the inside out so that we can stand up and defend ourselves when we absolutely need to. This process feels very entwined with your chariot journey. If I'm not mindful of what energy I do have, then that is me letting the ship run amok. It is one force is steering the ship while the other one wants to be still. The other one's asking me to rest, and I'm letting this first power just keep dragging me. So we see where working on this process and tuning into intuition helps us prepare our vessel for aligned movement rather than forcing something that isn't ready or there to even be forced. And as we think about the Hierophant, it may be that you bolster your intuition in this process with some sort of traditional structure. Perhaps you are making space every once in a while to pray or to meditate or to do whatever it is that you do within your intuitive spaces to keep your field clear, to keep your mind open and operating optimally rather than crowded and feeling stressed. Let's see what these dice have to say, Aries. Okay, 8 shows me a little bit more about that 8th house and that final eclipse, making me think too about sort of the infinite nature of 8 and how we kind of want, the 10 of Wands has to keep going infinitely. The 10 of Wands is sort of a misnomer because it misleads in the finality of being a 10, which is that it's not ever finished. Our passions die with us. So if we are thinking about sort of also the 8th house psychological space and what we share with others, as well as the infinite nature of what it is that we are carrying in this life, we may want to figure out where there is ebb and flow in that process. Aquarius shows up showing me more about Pluto, and it may be important to consider that the High Priestess may be trying to reveal to you more about the power of the future and how you're going to get there, what powers you possess to build the future that you hope. And you're going to need to think about that lest you get so burnt out that you don't have those energies or resources anymore. And we have Uranus, which we know is in Taurus, hanging out in your second house. This tells me that there might be some sort of unknown entity or theme that emerges. Maybe that's connected to this High Priestess and also connected to this Ten of Wands, because if this is in the second house, Mercury is going to move over that point during retrograde, and therefore it will also be part of the shadow at the end of retrograde. And it might be that disruptions in your second house space cause some sort of disruption in your energy to what you're able to provide. The second house is where we have the skills and talents to do what we do to make money. And if those skills change at some point, if something happens where you're temporarily unable to use those skills, it may be connected to this Ten of Wands asking you to slow down. So keep these themes in mind and let me know how they play out in the comments.